In this tutorial, we're going to examine the clone stamp tool as a means to correct or improve images, get rid of unwanted objects in images. I have a picture right now of the field here at the middle school. In the distance you can see some of the sleds in red, and you can see a barn back there in green. A nice picture of the athletic field. What's not so nice, arguably, are all the wires. And if you take a look, you can see about 5 of them. One here, 2 here, and 1 here. So this video will look at the clone stamp tool, and I'll go through 2 photos where we would want to change something or improve something, or just to show the power of the clone stamp tool. The clone stamp tool can be found underneath the paintbrush tool, and the brush and the pencil tool. You can right click on it and you'll find the clone stamp tool and the pattern stamp tool. We're going to be looking at the clone stamp tool. You'll notice up top that the clone stamp tool has a diameter of the brush. In this case I'm going to make it 40, and it has a hardness. In most cases you'd keep it at 100. So as I move out here, you can see it almost looks like a paintbrush ready to go. And the thing about the clone stamp tool, what the clone stamp tool does is allows you to take a sample of an area, and it allows you to apply that sample color or design somewhere else in an image. So to give you an idea that before I get rid of the wires, if I were to zoom in on these sleds here, and then go to my clone stamp tool, you might want to use the clone stamp tool to duplicate something like these for 5 sleds there. And in order to use the clone stamp tool, you also have to use the Alt key. Now watch what happens when I hit the Alt key. You'll notice that my brush tip turns into a target, or it looks like a bullseye. What that means is that the clone stamp tool wants you to sample something. So the clone stamp tool wants you to hold the Alt key down and then move your mouse to somewhere in the image that you want to sample. Once you show up at that image, you need to left click your mouse 1 time. So I'm going to take my target, move over here to these sleds, or this sled, and left click my mouse 1 time. It's just taken a sample. Now you'll notice, you can see it over here on some versions. If I were to hold my mouse button down, I can recreate that sled here. So I'm going to edit, I'm going to step backward and get rid of those extra sleds. And that was just to show you what the clone stamp tool will do. So I'm going to zoom out to get the whole image on the screen. I'll click Fit Screen, and here I have my image again. So I'm going to click on the clone stamp tool, and I'm going to go right underneath this wire, and I'm going to hit the Alt key, and you'll notice I get that target I talked about. Now I'm going to show you how mistakes can be made by the clone stamp tool, because what it does when it samples something, it will sample and adjust with the user. So if I were to sample the sky underneath these wires, I just clicked once, and now I can start painting it in. If I were to go too high, it will start creating the wires again. You can see it starts to recreate the wires again. Watch, I'll do it again over here. I'll sample, and I'll start to paint the wires away, but they'll start to appear above it. Again, I'll start to paint, I'll sample it, and I'll start to paint them, but they'll appear above it. So a couple different ways to remedy this. You can do multiple samples, which when you do this, the likelihood that your edit is going to look better is greater. And I can do a little bit lower sample. I'll sample down here, and then I can start to paint these lines away. And I'm going to do samples regularly underneath it, because the sky changes color as I go across. For instance, oops, sample here and get rid of that. Notice I'm doing multiple samples, and I click. Notice the sky over here is blue, and over here it's white. So the key is to do multiple samples and multiple brush strokes. And you can see I'm taking multiple samples from underneath where the wires are, and I'm using multiple small brush strokes to get rid of it. again, when you do this, the smaller the brush strokes, the better the edit is going to be. So it can take a little bit of time, but it's worth your time to make things look a little nicer. Okay, now I'm going to sample the blue sky up here. Get this over here. Okay, that doesn't look so good, so I'm going to step backward. I'm going to try to get a little bit better sample here. Still could be better. Maybe I'll sample above it. There we go. A little bit better. Necessary to do, again, multiple samples to get your desired outcome here. And there you can see I got the tree a little bit. So I'll just do a sample here. Okay, so that's one way we can get rid of those lines, and it could take a little bit more time, but I could do them all. So let's look at another picture here, probably a little less desirable. But if we want to get rid of this, we would do it the same way. So I'm going to make sure I have my clone stamp tool. And you notice I'm moving it around when I hit my, oops. When I hit my Alt key, I get the target. So I'm going to hit the Alt key here to get a target, and I can start painting it away. And you'll notice I do multiple clicks and I do multiple samples. That's just one way to, it's the best way to do a nicer, cleaner edit. And you can see that, and then you can do some samples over here if it starts to look the same. And I'll do some samples over here. Okay, I could even get rid of this shadow. Notice multiple samples, multiple brush strokes, and then if I can kind of see my pattern of my paintbrush there, I'll just do some random around it. So the clone stamp tool works very nicely. It's necessary to sample often. You do that by hitting the Alt key. That'll give you the target, and then painting or using your brush to get rid of undesired objects.